How's it going, everyone? I hope you're doing well today. The title's not clickbait. We're actually going to talk about my anxiety and other things that are going on during this run, because wouldn't that just be hilarious if we talked about flaws during a flawless run? You get it? Because there's flawless. Anyways, so flawless is a weapon that you can unlock. It's been there since like 1.2, I believe. It always crits, but as soon as you get hit, you don't crit for 15 seconds, and then you kind of go back into it. So that means basically don't get hit. It's one of the only melee survival weapons that works both in brutality and in survival, like both pretty efficiently, which is why I put it fairly high on my tier list. But I think that while it does have some issues, like the speed can be a little bit slow sometimes, and non-crit condition is a little bit weak. I think overall it's a pretty great weapon, and you can see some of the other stuff I got going on. I got Frostbite, we got Heart of Ice, we've got Telluric Shocks, we've got Death Orbs and Punishments, and we got a lot of stuff going on here. So you guys are going to enjoy this one. Leave a like, subscribe for more Depth Cells content, and enjoy the run, everybody. So to start off on a lighter note, one of the hardest things about this run is going to be trying to keep focused on talking about mental health while trying to do this run at the same time. So I'm going to try my best here, but we're just going to power through this. So for those of you who don't know, I have something called generalized anxiety disorder. And for those of you who do not know what that is, it's basically a combination of physical and mental symptoms that lead to this overall diagnosis that essentially can be boiled down to constant worrying. Panic attacks can be a symptom of it, kind of like sweating profusely, heart palpitations, just like all these different things like combined into one. And for me, that definitely rings true because I didn't get diagnosed with it until a few years back. And over the last few years, I've been trying to put this into context more and more into my past. And the biggest example that I can think of right now is it's actually two things. One thing is how other people perceive me, and it's related to my second thing, which is my trouble in school. So growing up, I struggled in school, not so much in terms of grades, but more so in terms of like the behavioral aspect of it. Like I got into a lot of trouble when I was a kid, especially like as a teenager and preteen and stuff like that, because I have ADHD as well. And ADHD can kind of manifest itself in a few different ways. One is the hyperactivity, so you're just like constantly moving, your scatterbrain, things like that. Another is not being able to focus on things, and another one is just like a combination of those two. I definitely have that combination. So growing up in school, I got into a lot of trouble. I actually got relatively decent grades in high school and middle school and college and stuff like that. But I got in trouble a lot in class for more of the behavioral things because either I was like completely hyperactive or had trouble like keeping focus and like paying attention during the course of the classes. So I got into a fair amount of trouble by doing that growing up. And I feel like a lot of people in the education industry didn't necessarily understand how to deal with mental health back then because we didn't have these conversations. Now I look at teachers these days and how informed they are on mental health, and I think that's amazing. But back then, it wasn't necessarily like that. So I remember one specific incident when I was in high school. I was on the soccer team, and we used to hang out in the coach's room at lunchtime. And like we would crack jokes and do just things like that, just random things. And there was one day in which our coach had us do something. I don't really remember what it was. I was like team award voting or something like that. And then I made some like joke or something like that. And I got like completely screamed at that day. And it was two things, right? Because one, I felt completely embarrassed because everyone was kind of looking at me, and I already knew that the coach didn't like me for whatever reason. But the other thing was more of like, I don't really do anything that bad. What am I doing to deserve this right now? Am I just like a bad person and I can't see it right now? So these are the questions like I was asking myself that day. I was like 15 or 16 at the time, and I remember going home like kind of in tears because I didn't know how to process this. I didn't understand that, it was a combination of my ADHD and anxiety just kind of working together to form this really messed up part in my brain. And it was really, really hard for me to process, and I was only able to really start thinking about it in terms of like what my mental illness is years later, like over a decade later, right? So it's just incidents like that kind of made me resent school a little bit, but also kind of understand why I operated the way I did. So the other thing is the way people perceived me. So relating it back to school, because I was hyperactive a lot growing up, I would kind of like shake my legs a lot, move desks, things like that, and it would bother people next to me. And some people didn't really have the best way of portraying that. And it would come across as like hyper aggressive and, this guy is such a weirdo. Why is he acting like this? And, I would get really anxious because I'm like, what am I doing that's wrong? Like, why does everybody hate me? And it would get to a point where I just felt like completely isolated from everybody. So this isolation kind of took a toll on me as I got older. So as I started kind of going into college, I started doing more self-destructive things. I'm not going to get into that too much, but basically I was very self-destructive. And I remember like trying to go to college parties and feeling anxious there because everyone's like looking at me all weird. At least that's how I perceived it anyways. And I remember not having the best support system at the time. So my friends were usually just like, oh, get over it. Like, it's not a big deal. And, just things like that. And, I don't blame them too much because it's really difficult to talk about mental health when you don't have those conversations in the first place, which is why I think it's great that it's as open as it is now. But back then in the early 2000s, we weren't really having those conversations. So for me, having anxiety, I really didn't know how to process anything. So I internalized a lot of things. I had an extremely low self-esteem. I didn't know how to take care of myself. I didn't know how to deal with like anything, any slight that I had in my life, anything that went like even remotely wrong. I internalized it because I was constantly anxious, because I was constantly worrying about every single little thing in my life. And that's not to say that I was not justified in the way that I felt about things, but at the end of the day, the people who had harmed me and all the toxic friendships and relationships that I had in my life, they weren't really thinking about that at the end of the day. I was the one that was thinking about it, right? So I was the one who was doing damage to myself by not taking care of myself. But again, the thing is, I didn't know how to take care of myself, which is why I had all this self-destructive behavior. So fast forward a few years, I now in a situation where like I have to go get help, because if I didn't, I was just going to do more and more damage to myself, and it was just going to end up all bad for everybody. So once I started getting that help that I really needed, then I could start really contextualizing my life in the way I needed it to. So like understanding why I was upset with school, or why I couldn't concentrate, or why I couldn't sit still, or why my interactions with people always kind of rubbed me the wrong way, or why I would come home upset after interactions with people. So after all this stuff, I started really understanding that a lot of it really just had to do with my mental health, and that I had no real way of coping with it at the time. So this is where I start getting into the healing process, right? And I know I kind of sped through all of that in about 7 minutes, but I think the overall message I wanted to get to was that I had a lot of anxiety and I wasn't taking care of myself. So now, how do I take care of myself? Well, to be completely honest, one of the biggest ways has been video games and, going on YouTube and making these videos. It's a big thing. Like, I'm not the most outgoing person in the world, so being able to like upload videos and do like my own commentary and get feedback from you guys has been incredibly meaningful to me. Even every now and then I'll see a dislike on one of my videos and I'll get like incredibly upset, but then I'll have to remind myself that, okay, this is just me like being overly anxious again, that people don't like me for whatever reason, and I can't control what other people do at the end of the day. And it's just like in my real life, there's going to be moments when there's people that I don't necessarily get along with, and sometimes I get really hurt by what other people say. But the fact that I have so many people in my life who genuinely care about me and want me to do well, especially over the last few years, like that far outweighs the bad interactions that I have with people. And YouTube has kind of helped me realize that a little bit. Especially when it comes to like taking those risks. Like putting up these videos was like huge risk for me. Because it's like, again, I was really anxious and worried about how other people were going to perceive me. Was I going to be laughed off the face of the earth? Because the internet is not the nicest place in the world, and people can be kind of jerks sometimes. So I was really worried about that, right? And, the feedback that I've gotten has been incredibly constructive. Like, as far as like the criticism, if you even want to call it that, like I've had amazing feedback from so many people, and just people who enjoy the content. Like that broadsword run that I did, like I wanted to do that because that person has been in the comments of my videos, and I could tell like they genuinely cared about my content, and that was stuff that really started making me like overcome my anxiety about posting each and every single video. And now I have a lot more confidence, and I feel a lot better about posting videos. So, I really have been able to grow as not just a commentator, but as a person in of myself, because now I have less anxiety when it comes to like that public speaking part of it. And that interaction with people, I don't even know the people behind the screens who I'm talking to, but I'm having like actual conversations with them, and that's helping me have conversations with people in real life, right? So I think it's just like things like that have been incredibly helpful towards me, like kind of that skill building. Another thing that I've been doing to take care of myself is honestly music. And I don't talk about music that much on this channel, but my favorite genre in the world is it's a genre called metalcore. So it's basically it's essentially just hardcore punk with metal influences. And some of my favorite bands include Stick to Your Guns, The Ghost Inside, Make Them Suffer. A lot of these bands talk about mental health and social issues and things that I'm genuinely like very, very passionate about. And it's empowered me over the years because I've like looked at the lyrics and like seen these guys in concert and what their message is and what they have to say. And as someone who's felt isolated and as someone who has felt not good enough, it's really resonated with me. And seeing other people in that same scene who are struggling with some of the same mental health issues that I do, like that's incredibly helpful for me in terms of being able to have those conversations with people that sometimes I don't even know. So these are just like certain ways in which like I've been able to take care of myself over the years, over the last couple years, I would say. And the final thing is that I have an incredible support system. Like I kind of mentioned this like very briefly earlier, but my family is incredibly supportive of me. My friends are incredibly supportive of me. And without them, like it's really hard for me to, be able to process certain things. Like I sometimes, like if I'm having a bad day at school or having a bad week or something, like I'll talk to one of my friends or like my sister or my brother-in-law or something like that, and I'll talk about what's going on in my life. And, either I'll ask for advice or I'll just be like, look, like I just need a vent, just like listen to me. And they'll do that. And then I come out of it feeling much better because I don't feel so isolated, I don't feel so trapped, and that anxiety starts wearing down a little bit. And I think my main overall point is that I wanted to give a little bit of context into why I do what I do on YouTube. And as well, just like have that conversation, and maybe, what I'm saying can like allow somebody to like open up. Not necessarily to me, but to somebody in their life that they trust, whether it's mental health or something that they're struggling with, and, just be able to start getting that support and help that they deserve. Because I feel at the end of the day, everyone deserves to be the best version of themselves. Everyone deserves to be happy. And I feel at this point in my life, this is the happiest I've ever been. And I think that, I still have a ways to go. There's still stuff that I have to process, but that's life for you, right? Life is a never-ending process in which you're always learning. You are never done learning in life. And to be honest, like even talking about this, I'm going to post this on YouTube. I'm probably taking a big risk in doing this because I am not usually going to talk about my personal life on YouTube. Like after this, we're going back to the normal Dead Cells runs. But I feel like, it's important to be at least get that out there and show that a lot of people struggle with a lot of different things in their life and we may not know about it. And I think one of the best things that we can do as just people is to support those around us who are suffering from something. It doesn't have to be anxiety or ADHD or depression or whatever, but if they're just struggling with something, just be there, listen to them, have empathy, show that like you really care about their struggles and what they're going through. And if you yourself are going through something, it's about not necessarily like, oh, you have to go to a therapist, but it's about, trying to find something that works for you. It's trying to find something that allows you to process the different events that are going on in your life and, not feel like you're completely alone. And just to reiterate, like I really do feel like everyone deserves to be happy and everyone deserves to be the best version of themselves. I feel like I'm getting closer and closer to that, and that's because I've been able to start taking care of myself in the way that I need to. But I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me talk about this for the last, what, 13, 14 minutes now. We still have a Dead Cells run to talk about, don't we? So let's finish that up. So what I can say about this run so far is that it's kind of been a mixed bag of things. And I think at the end of the day, it comes down to, as it always does, me not being good at melee survival. Side note, I don't know how the Royal Guard, 1, didn't hit me into the spike ball. 2, I didn't get hit by that Royal Guard's big ass attack. That would have sucked. But we're just trying to get through this, honestly. But here's the thing about Flawless, like I think it's a fine weapon. It's not bad at all. I'm just not good at slower weapons. Like, you probably saw that in my broadsword run. Like, I made a lot of mistakes that I don't normally make. I don't get hit by the Rampager like that. Or even just this frequently where I'm just like constantly just like getting hit by everybody and everything. So yeah, not my finest run, but I also, you know, think that it's important to try out weapons that you may not necessarily feel comfortable with, just to get a sense into your playstyle and try to change things up. So speaking of not being good at melee survival, enjoy the Hand of the King fight, everybody, because this one's not going to turn out very good. Turns out, Ice Shield is atrocious against bosses. You may have saw that against my against the Collector when I was not able to do certain things. There's a reason I use Punishment almost all the time when I'm running survival. It's because it's the best shield in the game. 1, and 2, freezing bosses is tough because like they have like these really subtle movements, and if you're freezing bosses, then you're gonna end up like doing all this, like having to like dodge in like all these weird ways. And I'm not a parry god. I should tell you guys that. Some of my best runs, some of my most efficient runs do not involve shields. That's just kind of how it is. That's something I need to improve on. I think I actually did a pretty good job of that in my Blood Only run and in my... yeah, that one was not good. But I think that it's something I'm getting better at, but I also do like the constant turmoil that comes with running tactics. And only reason we didn't die is because we're survival, like real talk. It's the only reason that we didn't die. But I will say that Telluric shot kill is pretty awesome. But we're at like 3%, 4%. We gotta heal. Because I realize at this point, like, I cannot run with the Ice Shield. Not for me. It's just, I don't like it. It's not bad by any means. Like, I put it in the A tier in my tier list. It's just, it's not great against bosses, and I think I made a point of saying that. Like, it's not, a lot of the times when I don't necessarily vibe with weapons, it's not the fault of the weapon, it's me, right? Like, that's why tier lists are, like, so personal a lot of the time. And there's obviously just going to be a lot of bias much of the time. But I think I should take this opportunity to explain what some of the mutations are. So I took something called Frostbite and Heart of Ice. So for those of you who are on console, these are new to 1.6. And what Frostbite does is basically slowdown works as dot, so damage over time. And it's a very small damage over time, but it works in like killing bats and smaller enemies and aggroing elites and things like that. So that's kind of why I did that. And the other one is Heart of Ice, which gives me a significant cooldown, similar to Blind Fate sort of cooldown, for melee attacks when an enemy is frozen or slowed down. And because I have the victim's nearby slowdown affix on my Flawless, that's why I ran those. But now we have the Collector, and again, it's just going to be a challenging fight, but I do have the Punishment Shield now, so this is going to be a lot smoother than the other bosses went. And I love the Punishment Shield just because of its ability to block pretty much everything in your path. One of the issues with Collector is that he kind of, when he does that strike combo, he actually will start kind of like hitting the turrets, like if you're running like a Tactics or a Brutality build. So it gets in your way, and then you're kind of unable to do anything afterwards. So it can be a bit of a pain. But we get through this part pretty flawlessly. No pun intended. Oh, what am I saying? Pun absolutely intended. There's a lot of good puns with this weapon. That's why I made a build on it. But we're getting really good damage off. Like the flawless, when the crits are on, it's one of the most powerful weapons in the game. Like, and I mean that completely. I ranked this super low in 1.4, and I really shouldn't have done that. I think what it needs is good support. Like, it needs a shield. So I think for that reason it's not S tier, because like even with the shield, like melee survival needs a shield in my opinion, or it needs like Frost Blast or something. It needs some sort of like significant amount of support, but I think punishment is like the best one for it at the end of the day. And we're just gonna keep pairing these little fireballs. And we're coming up to the end of the run. And yeah, like this flawless, like I ran into a lot of trouble with these bosses and like different points in the run. That was my first time getting hit in the collector fight, so not bad all things considering. And we're gonna heal and drink the panacea and finish this guy off. But yeah, I mean, flawless, pretty solid weapon, but I gotta say, melee survival, not my favorite thing in the world. So my last two runs have been melee survival. We're going back to the chaos known as tactics. We're going back to the fast-paced runs known as brutality runs, kill and roll, and kill or be killed, basically. But I hope you guys enjoyed me talking about the mental health part of my life. Like, that's a very significant portion of my life. It's extremely important to me, and I wanted to get that out there. If you got something from it, leave a comment. If you can relate, leave a comment. I really would love to hear what you guys have to say. And I want my comment space to always be safe and open to everybody, and be welcoming, and for people to like support each other. You know, whether we're talking about mental health or we're talking about Death Cells or other games or life in general, like I want to build a community that fosters healthy relationships. So thank you guys again for joining me. Leave a like, subscribe for more Dead Cells content. We're going back to the regular runs after this. So I really appreciate you guys sitting through this one. Thank you guys again, and have a great night, everybody.